Okay.
Hello, Dr. Rob. I'm going to start with a question that somebody emailed me. They were driving, and so I said that I would scoot this one in. So
they were driving and emailing? That's not
no,
good.
they emailed me because they knew they were going to be driving, and so they wanted to be safe. So it actually is a good thing. So this is, Dear Dr. Rob, as a child, I was sexually abused by my brother and 2 cousins, maybe more. I know some of this took place around 10 years old, but I think it may have taken place when I was younger also. I did not disclose this for over 40 years and only after getting caught seeing prostitutes. I have hurt my wife in the past when I went to strip clubs, and even with her seeing her deep pain, I did not stop. And after that time is when I started seeing prostitutes. Since I have talked about my sexual trauma, I have not had the desire to act out. I've been very comfortable with my outer circle behavior. Since talking about my trauma, I've gotten closer to my kids and actually hugging them for the first time ever. I just concentrate on being the best I can now. I want to be the best husband and the best father I possibly can be. My own little motto is be the person you needed when you were younger. My question is, am I actually a sex addict, being as I have not had the desire to act out in 7 months, or is there possibly some other underlying issue? I'm giving all to my relationship now. My wife is everything to me, and I don't even understand how I could do what I did to her. So that was a lot. Did you catch all that?
Yeah, I'm trying to actually tune in my earbuds. Whole thing. And
now I can hear it. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, that's working.
Now I can't see you though.
That's okay. It takes a minute.
There.
So a couple of things. I heard the word 7 months, I have to say. And I'm thinking about what we've been doing.
Have not acted out in 7 months. Yes.
Right. And then I think about what we've been doing for the last 7 months. And it's mostly different than the way we've been living our lives before. You know, I think COVID, March, April, May, I got to count on my fingers. March, April, May, June, July, August, September. I mean, you're not that far, you know, and COVID, I think for a lot of us, for me anyway, has been a incredibly supportive at home, lots of love at home, lots of structure at home, lots of being around people I love. And so for me, and I know if it's true for you, it would be a lot, it has been my desire to act out, much less in the last 7-8 months, because I have a lot of support, a lot of structure, and the stressors are so immediate, and I have people around me. It's just not the same as pounding the pavement. So just a thought, you know, and I'm saying this because we have a saying, I'm sure Tammy knows this, when I'm working on myself, that my addict is in the corner doing push-ups. So while you are having an experience of being open and feeling good about yourself, and, you know, as should be, you're working through trauma, you're working on these issues, your family knows you better. But I would be curious, and we don't know from this question, but that's fine. How long have you been doing this? Because doing the recovery part, because I know that I know a lot of people I work with, they're so scared and sorry about what has happened. And then when they get into the recovery, they're so kind of excited about having a place to go and knowing what they need to do. And then they tell their spouse, and so they're relieved of that burden of secrets. And all of that pressure leaves them not really feeling like acting out very much, but it will be back. It is always back. So does sexual trauma drive our desire to act out? Not directly. I think that stressors that remind us of the trauma, or relationships or situations, we will act out over that. So congratulations, you've taken a lot of burdens off of you, your secrets, your hiding, your intimacy is improved, and you're feeling more open about what happened to you. But people do trauma work, Tammy can attest to this, for years and years and years. And people spend years and years working through their addiction, and years trying to figure out how to have healthy relationships. So while we have breakthroughs, the road gets narrower. And so what might be really big for you now, and just, oh, I don't have a desire to act out, I'm feeling better, later down the road, when you don't have all the support, when it's not new, when you run into other stressors and you're out in the world, I wouldn't carry this belief that it's just gone and I'm done with it. Not if you've done it for, you know, half a life. Tammy, do you have thoughts about that?
No, I agree. And I think
saw you going like
peeling
this,
back,
so.
yeah, I was like, yeah, the peeling back, you know, the layers, because, you know, you even mentioned, you know, I was around 10 years, but I think there may be more. So you kind of had this glimmer that there was more. And while, yes, the immediate relief that Dr. Rob was talking about, but, you know, the next time something starts bumping up against, then what happens? So, and, you know, and it's kind of like, you know, am I a sex addict? Does it matter? I mean, at some point, does the label matter? You know, if what you're doing, you know, for recovery is working, you know, right, whatever. So Okay,
Mhm.
on to the next question. So if you've got questions, throw them in the Q&A, and we're going to keep, we've got lots already. So I feel like I'm asking too many questions, but to be honest, it seems that some answers just make me feel more confused. I'm the partner of a sex addict. We've been together 31 years, and he's working recovery and has been clean since mid-May this year. So I'm kind of going back to what you just said earlier. I learned everything. So he says in June, I have struggled and feel I should be feeling more comfortable by now. I worry about both of us. I have two questions today. Is it normal for an addict to be able to spend time in a brothel and not have sex unless his one lady is there? I've heard this compared to other addictions, and like the alcoholic would not go to the bar and not have a drink. And also would like to know, when did shatter the fantasy if the affair partner prostitute began texting that she was suicidal, sharing her health problems and her past relationship hurts? Seems to me it would become too real. Finally, I will end by saying that my husband is doing all the work he can, but he does not check in on me daily, and he also gets angry when I talk about it. So that's a lot.
Wow. Well,
First thing
I
I'm
can
going
take
like,
on the,
the
I'll tell you what, I'll
brothel.
take the
I'm
first
sorry.
half and you, I'm sorry.
Okay, keep going.
I'll take the first half and you can take the second. How about that?
Sure.
Because I'm, the one I'm curious about is 31 years. What, I'm sorry, how long is their clean? The beginning, the first part
We
I
have
didn't hear
been
it from.
together 31 years, and
Right,
he said he's been clean since mid-May,
right. And what's
but
the
then it
question?
sounds like he's still going to the brothel, and he says I've learned
Right.
everything in June.
So Tammy was right when she said, this sounds like the question we just answered. I've been working on my own personal recovery for 35 years, maybe longer. I think I'm still at times very difficult, really challenged, not the person I want to be. This is not a destination. You get off the bus and you've recovered. This is from trauma or from addiction. This is a lifelong process of learning and growing. And so when you say mid-May, I sort of saw Tammy like, that's not that very long ago. And speaking of you, the spouse, and I know you're gonna have more things you can pull out of this question, Tammy. Um, I've written some books about this, and I would recommend maybe you could think about them. One is called Out of the Doghouse. And the reason I wrote that book is because men often have little empathy or don't understand what it takes for partners to heal. One of the things we've learned in our field over the years, and I've been doing this 25 years. There's a number of people now who've really been around a while in this field, sex addiction, relationships. And one of the things we've learned is that it takes partners a lot longer than we ever really thought for them to begin to feel trusting again, feel safe again. And so you said you entered this by being confused. Is that the person that says every time they come in here? So let me be very clear. Number one, there's nothing you as a partner could ever have done, nor can ever do to make this person act out with sex workers or anything else. You can be fat, you can be thin, you can be young, you can be old, but the decision to go to that is their decision. There are a lot of other things they could do if they're unhappy. That's their decision. You get the right, and you have the right, I think, to be angry for a very long time. You've been married for 31 years. For 31 years, you've been lied to, you've been cheated on, and whatever else, and kept secrets from and all that. And now it sounds like you're expecting yourself to turn around in 6 or 7 months and say, okay, I should be over this now. I'm feeling better. And, your life has been destroyed. Everything you believed in, you can't believe in anymore. And you're looking back at the last 30 years and saying, I don't know what any of that was real or how much of it or what we have now. So please allow me to give you the time. It can take a year and a half before you spouses are not up and down and up and down. And I hate you one day and I love you the next. And I want a divorce lawyer, but when can you go on a honeymoon? I mean, you guys are all, and that is the nature of what happens when you're profoundly betrayed, is that sometimes you love them, sometimes you hate them. You're ambivalent about this thing you've been so deeply connected to. So I would give yourself a while to feel really awful about this. And don't let, by the way, your addict spouse or whoever he was or whatever you think he was, say to you, are you over it yet? Or I'm tired of you being angry, or it's been 6 months. When are you going to get over it? No spouse should ever hear that from us, because look, this guy put you through this for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, and you're supposed to be over it in 7 months. It's going to take a lot longer than that. And your feeling better is based on two things, I think. One is letting yourself get support and feeling this and going through it. And the other part is, who is it that you see every day at home? Is he going to support groups? Is he going to therapy? Do you see someone who's doing the things that tell you you can begin to relax and feel trusting? Or is he still being the same person he's always been, but saying, I'm really working on this? You will know in your gut whether he's really showing up for this or not. The question about the brothel, and I didn't really understand that, Tammy, maybe you could help with that piece.
Well, I can, and I have a question for you, because I think this is more of a therapist question too, because if the prostitute began texting that she was suicidal and sharing her health problems and all that, to me, I was going like, doesn't that convert kind of into the emotional affair of like, and now you need me and all of this type of thing? So it's, yeah, but I was thinking from a brothel standpoint, it's a business and they don't just have people hanging out. So, I just don't understand how somebody could go just hang out at the brothel. I have to say I haven't been, so I don't know. But on the other hand, I'm like, I just don't see that as being, an effective business strategy. So to me, there would be some payment made for some services in order for somebody to take up space there. That would be my thought. But it would
And I
still,
would add
to me,
to
be
that,
hurtful and cheating to have him hanging out at the brothel. So.
Well, I had a friend when I was in early recovery who used to hang out at one adult bookstore so often. This is absolutely true. He would show this at meetings. They gave him a cup with his name on it. So when he was there, in between whatever he was doing there, if he needed a break, he could have a cup of coffee with the guys who worked in the adult porn shop, and then he could go back to doing whatever he was doing. So we do learn to accommodate the environments that we're spending a lot of time in. But here's something I want to say to you, partners who have someone going and seeing sex workers. I think the research is something like 75, 80% of men who go to see a sex worker aren't there for the sex. They're there to talk to somebody. And they don't want to talk to you because you have feelings and questions and issues. And they want someone who's going to talk to them like you did when you first met. They want to talk to someone without any of the pressures of kids or family or you're upset. They want a woman to tell them they're wonderful and they're great and they're really appreciated. And yeah, the sex may or may not come with that, but trust me, most of the men who go to see a sex worker are doing it because they feel, I can't get this in my life and I want to go get this over here. So of course, not many of the men I work with have any idea how to develop intimacy with a partner. They just run into some other person to try to get that. And what they're doing isn't real either, because when you're in relationship with someone, you're paying, as Taffy said, and their job is to keep you entertained. And I can't tell you how many men I've worked with who say, I finally got that sex worker to tell me that I was the one. That I was the one who was important and special. She finally turned to me. Well, that's the day she realized she could raise her prices. And nothing against sex workers, but as Tammy's, and I don't have anything against sex workers. I've sold myself in my distant past. But you do what you're going to do out there. But I don't think that there is any reason to think. I've had so many guys come into treatment saying they were special. They're just paying for it. And these folks, they know what to say. It's their job. So what I worry about for you is that your husband or spouse has split the relationship so profoundly that he is deeply emotionally involved with a sex worker. And I see that all the time. And by the way, what we are attracted to in part in men and women who are in the sex industry is their vulnerability. They've been broken. They have issues. We can feel it. And so for this man to get her to say and do the things, I'm sorry, for her to call him and say, I'm in trouble, I have a problem. That says to him, I'm important. I'm special. I mean something to her. That's more what he's interested in than what anything she needs. He just likes the idea that this woman who sees however many men she sees, that he's the one that she calls because he's that important. And she's playing that. She probably calls every guy and says, oh, I'm so miserable. And maybe they send a little money and some jewelry. So, Tammy, anything else about that?
No, I did put, because you said he's clean. I don't know what he's doing for his recovery, and you aren't, 100% clear either because he isn't sharing. So I put the link, the next level 1 sex and porn addiction 101 work group starts January 4th. There is still room for men to join that particular group. I would highly encourage him to participate in that. It will be a good foundation for him to learn. So, okay, next question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say to you folks, we can't really do therapy Like, we give this away and we can't do it if we charge for it because I work in this state, Tammy's in another state. My license doesn't transfer if you live in New York, the ethics of it. But we offer educational programming. So the piece you don't get in therapy, which is how do I figure out what sobriety is and what is a relapse and what's a trigger? And that is all in the coursework. It's like taking a class. And part of it is, how do I manage my relationship and the conflict that I've created with my spouse? So there are really pieces of that in there. So that's what Tammy was talking about. I'm sorry, I further explained.
No, that's very helpful. So, and he does do expert consultations. If you want more information, contact me. What would you say are the top 3 internet filters? Oh, I'm just going to tell you, if you go to there, this is all on our resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. I'll put the link in just a minute. But I'll tell you, you know, I mean, if you want to elaborate on filters versus blockers or something like that, but really there's a lot of information on our site about that.
That's a really good point, Tammy, and I can say something about filters and stuff, but what Tammy's going to drop in the box is, you know, on sex and relationship healing, that is all about free information for you guys, free groups for you guys. It's where we are now, basically. So I think quarterly, we check all of the filtering and blocking software to see if we still like it, if it's still working for us, if it's still something to recommend. So we're pretty current. I would be on the site to look for that. I couldn't tell you personally, but our checkers know. But I will say this to you, that that there are different kinds of ways to block content, like, let's say, porn or whatever you want to block. One is, if you have a little child, you might want to go through a browser instead of Google browsers or Safari browsers or whatever you use. They're like a Disney browser, and it means that you're in their world and they control everything you see, because there is nothing accessible about anything they don't approve. So they might approve encyclopedias, they're going to approve, you know, but they're not going to approve certain kinds of content. You can't get to it no matter what. That's trying to think, filtering, blocking, and I think that's blocking.
Blocking, yeah.
Filtering, thank you, Tammy. Filtering is when you put in certain areas that you're on a regular, you know, you're on Google, but you have the software running, and it says what words and what arenas do you not want to have any contact with. And, you know, if I had a 7-year-old, I could set that up so nothing that I would want like, it might be really cute to no violence, which maybe if I had a 15-year-old, you know, they're into, you know, some kind of video game, they might. So filters or something can be set up for the individual with specific words and phrases and areas around them that get filtered out, and they don't have access to it, or that no matter how hard they try. And I think personally that that's a great way to go with a teenager, you know, or a young kid. Like, you don't want them to have access. Under 14 or 12, they shouldn't be able to access it. But once they're older, and for sex addicts, I recommend tracking software. And what that does is, if I was tracking Tammy, every time she typed something in, if I was the person receiving it, I would see at the end of the day every place she went. And I could see everywhere on her phone she went, because she's putting the software on everything. I like this particular thing, tracking. I like it with teenagers, and I like it with like older teenagers and with adults, because I don't want to look over someone's shoulder and see what they're doing in the moment. And I also know that if you're an addict and you've put a filtering program in that filters out certain words, you're going to try to get around them. And I've had people putting in statues, Venus to Milo, you know, just to get a picture of whatever. So I think it's better to say, I'm completely responsible and accountable to whatever I do, but someone's going to see it. And by the way, I don't recommend that's your spouse. I would never make the partner who is receiving my tracking information my spouse, because it's going to be very difficult for me to actually work on it and deal with it if I at the same time have to be managing my spouse's upset. So do spouses need to know? Absolutely. But first I process it with, or work through it with, the person who is receiving this information, which might be my sponsor or my therapist or my pastor or someone like that. Thanks. And all those things are on the site. You can look them up.
Yes, I put in the chat the link to both the level 1 work group, and also to the resources page, which has, beyond the filtering software, etc., it has lots of other resources. There's a ton of information on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, including Dr. Rob's Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast, which has over 600,000 downloads and counting, but just a lot of resources, including the links to the drop-in groups and these webinars as well. Okay, next question. My partner returned from treatment in November and has been relapsing every 2 to 3 weeks. My boundaries seem to cause him more distress than helping. What advice do you have?
You want to either interpret that or maybe give an example, Tammy, of what you think you're hearing, because that'd be easier for me to answer something more specific. Like, what does relapsing mean? Relapsing for some of your partners may mean he's looking at somebody's butt again. He's checking out that person again. That might mean relapse to you. I don't know if that means relapse to me would be actual behavior, like someone was touched or porn was looked at. So I don't know what they mean by relapse. Any thoughts, Tammy?
I'm thinking
Hands up.
whatever is in the, went to treatment, so I'm thinking whatever's in the inner circle is problematic and relapsing. So,
Well, let me back up a step and say this to all of you spouses and to the addicts as well. I had someone come in and I was working with them. They said, well, this is my plan for recovery. Here's my can do's and can't do's. Do's and can't do's. But I don't want to tell my spouse about that. I mean, that's between me and my sponsor. That's between me and my therapist. But what I can and can't do sexually, that's none of my spouse's business. Well, let me tell you, your spouse has every right to know what you can and cannot do sexually if you're in a relationship. Why wouldn't they? They thought you were monogamous. That was what they believed. Now you've done other things. They need to know about that and when that might recur. So, and if you have a slip, by the way, if you end up for some reason inadvertently returning to behavior, you have to tell your spouse. But I wouldn't necessarily let them be the first person you tell, because you're full of shame and they're full of anger and it goes to someone else first. So if someone that I was involved with was relapsing every 2 weeks, and I'll take relapse at its most basic term, as Tammy said, they're returning to previous behavior. They are looking at porn or they're calling ex-girl or whatever they're doing. I'm glad you know. I think it's good that you're hearing about it. I'm so glad it's not a secret for you. But I wonder, do you have any so two questions that interact. What is your boundary around, if this person continues to do this in this way, I need to take care of myself by doing this? Not a punishment, but I don't want to come home to finding out this or that, or so I'm going to set a boundary, like we need to sleep in separate rooms, or whatever it is in a COVID time. But I also heard you say, if I have this right, Tammy, that when I set boundaries, he gets upset. And so you're kind of in a dilemma, which is, if you really say, look, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm okay with, this is not, I'm willing to hang out in these circumstances, but not in these, that's a boundary. And then he gets upset by your having said, basically, I exist and this is where the line is for me. How can you set a line? How can you say this is okay and this isn't, if he just gets upset and doesn't want to hear that? So Tammy, you can tell everybody, if you don't mind, why do partners need boundaries? What's the point of a boundary? And why is it important that she maintain them and not give in?
right. I was thinking that very much. The boundaries are to create safety, and whether it's physical safety, emotional safety, whatever it is, to create safety. And it's interesting, that it seems to cause him distress and then he relapses. When he's been to treatment, he has a plan. He knows what triggers are. He knows where to reach out to get help. So to me, this feels like he's choosing to go to the old behavior rather than leaning into, oh, this is a problem for me. I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling whatever I don't like it. So I'm going to call my therapist. I'm going to call my sponsor. I'm going to join a drop-in group or whatever. To me, that feels like he's choosing not to use the tools that he was given and learn to use them better.
And to that point, by the way, if someone comes back from a treatment center, at least if they come back from our treatment center, they have a whole list of things that they need to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I'm going to go to this online meeting. I'm going to talk to this therapist. I'm going to go to this group. I'm going to check in with the alumni. So your spouse knows exactly what he needs to do or she needs to do. And I would suggest that you look at that and say, well, what were you asked to do when you left? What did you agree to? Because I hear they have these things called aftercare plans and they tell you. So I want to know, were you told to go to meetings, this and that? So I would take a good look at what he or she is actually doing versus what they say they were told to do. And, people don't end up in relapse generally to that degree if they're really following what's on the plan. Cami, you said something about addicts and what they do. So I thought of this term, which we say a lot, but may not be familiar to everyone, which is addicts tend to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And I think in this case, your spouse is taking a whole lot of permission from the fact that you haven't or not able to or haven't chosen to set boundaries around what he does. So basically, he can come up and do whatever he wants and say, I'm really sorry I did this, and then go back out. And there's nothing bad that happens in relationship to that. I think that's a problem.
Or even
Tammy,
blaming, like what I feel like is
right.
it's like your boundaries are causing me to do this, which is so not the case. And like with our treatment program, we have an alumni meeting every Tuesday. Dr. Rob pops in there about once a month.
We
But
have
if somebody's
45,
really, yeah,
55.
if somebody's struggling, guess what? One of the people on the staff is going to say, "Why don't you hang out for a little bit afterwards and let's talk and let's see what we need to do to get you back on track." So to me, this feels very much like, it's, hey, once I had tools, then if I relapse, it's a choice. Before I got into recovery, I didn't have a choice. But once I did, I have a choice whether I choose to go act out or if I choose to do something better for my recovery. So,
By the way, I understand that people might have a slip, 60 days, it might be a month or two, something goes by, they look, it's important. We don't just get instant recovery in that way. We struggle. But every 2 weeks after having been in treatment, I don't, I would, I don't feel like you're fully being respected. If he's really, really struggling with that, maybe he needs to go back to treatment. Maybe he needs to live somewhere else. I would not be wanting to be the partner who waits for someone to finish at work out of their office and come into my room and say, I've been acting out. And these days we're often in the same place. So does that mean he's acting out where you are? And yeah, I just think there's a lot of ick here. And if he's been out of treatment for a few months, you might call the treatment center and say, could somebody talk to him? Because I know we will always put someone forward and say, how can we help? It's been a while, but there should be someone there who's willing to say, I remember you, and how can I help with something? I mean, that's the obligation to our clients getting better doesn't stop when they leave. So there should be someone there that can help as well. Tammy, can we
okay.
go on?
No, we've got a whole bunch of them. So, how do we not focus so much on staying sober? I tend to focus on sobriety every day, and I'm not sure how to take my mind off this and get into the present moment. Any ideas?
Well, it's this three-letter word. I know that some of you've heard it and some of you haven't. And it starts with an F and it ends with an N and it has a U in the middle. A lot of us spend, I think, and deservedly so, a lot of time in meditation, journaling, going to meetings, 12-step programs, therapy. But I didn't stop my bad behavior to do nothing but reflect on my bad behavior. I want to have fun. And I think, and Tammy will tell you this from AA in particular, a lot of addicts feel like, okay, well then life it's just going to be a gray fog now because the only thing I enjoyed was that, and you've taken it away from me. So I guess I'll just be miserable all the time. And it doesn't really work like that. It's more like when you take that thing away, then you don't need so much volume on everything else. You get a little of this and a little of that and a little of this, and you put a life together. When we work with clients, they think that the most important thing is that they know what not to do and not do it. And I would say that's half of it. But the other half is, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? And it isn't just therapy meetings, going to the gym, talking to it has to be fun. I spent half this last weekend during Christmas planting plants and, working in my garage. And, I had fun this weekend. I did go to a meeting. I did talk to people, but I also enjoyed my life. And I think you have to have an equal focus on having pleasure, non-sexual, non-acting out, not, you got to get up in the morning, have something to look forward to. And it's really important that when you feel like all I do is recovery, and I assume that means your life is getting better, you need to actually start having a life and enjoying a life. Tammy doesn't know this, but I play Scrabble a lot and different word games online with friends. It seems silly, but I stay connected to them and I'm having fun. And, so there may be lots of little and big ways in which you can begin to celebrate your recovery and not just tolerate your recovery.
I did not know you played Scrabble online, but I'm sure you're very good because you're very good at words. But
Not so
I
good.
agree. We talked about this in webinars last week too. But the inner circle is the stuff that we're avoiding doing. The outer circle is bigger, and it's the stuff that we want to do to have a healthy and engaged life. When I went to treatment, one of the things the therapist told me was, if you don't make recovery fun, you're not going to make it. And so I was very intentional about finding fun. And so this weekend, I love to hike. And so I hiked 3 different mountains this weekend, which is like right up my alley, but that's really fun to me. But it has to be, it has to be more. And doing those things then also gives me gratitude, and then, which is good for my recovery. So it all blends together. But for me, the more I focus on the outer circle things and the good for me, the more the inner circle stuff just doesn't become important. So
I was going to
okay.
add one thing to that is, sorry, many of you spouses, and I completely understand this, and I would support you with your feelings. When we come home from treatment or we start to work on ourselves and we get this message that you need to enjoy your life too. So let's say in a different world than the one we're living in, I might start playing golf, or I might start volunteering, or I might not just the 12-step stuff, or I might join a baseball team. I might do things that are going to take me out into the world away from you that I'm going to enjoy. And it's not unusual for you spouses to say, well, that's what you were doing before. You were just going out and not paying attention to me or not paying attention to the family or whatever it is. And you were doing whatever you wanted. And now you want to keep doing that, only it's baseball instead of sex workers. And the answer is yes, because people so let me say it this way. I understand how spouses feel like, you don't deserve to go have fun right now. Like, you just ruined my life. And the roof needs work, and this is leaking, and we got that. And you want you to stay home and spend all your time working on our home and our family because you've abandoned us so profoundly that now you need to come back and make up for it. I completely understand that. And I hope in many ways, maybe small ways, like we show up on time, we help, we get involved, we initiate things. Maybe in small ways we can show you that you do come first and that we are learning our lessons. But we also need to feel like life is worth living just for ourselves, separate from you and our family life, separate from our recovery, that there's a little bit of fun out there, and that no matter what we've done, life doesn't have to be a punishment for what we've done. You may not want us to have fun. You may not be eager for us to have fun. You may not want to see us going out that door to go play ball. But believe me, we will be better people. We'll be kinder people. We'll be more able to hear your anger and hurt when we have some safe places to go, where we can just enjoy ourselves a little bit.
Okay, next question. After almost 3 years, my husband says he's tired of chasing recovery. He was almost sober 3 months, but had another slip. Still no formal disclosure, failed first polygraph. He has, still no final disclosure, failed the first polygraph. He has depression. How can I find him help for depression? How much does depression factor in? We've been separated for 2 years, married almost 40.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay.
I'm freezing. My door is open. So give me just a second to close the door.
Okay.
It doesn't look like I'm freezing, but it actually,
no,
I'm
it
not
doesn't.
actually here. Hold on a second. It's raining here.
Or there's ice on the waves. So.
Okay. But it did look like this a couple of days ago. So
okay.
I'm sorry, where were we?
So a husband,
2 years, 40 years.
2 years, been separated, married for 40, no final disclosure, failed polygraph. But the question is, how can I help? How can I find him help for depression? And how much does depression factor in?
Well, I'd love you to start, because what I'm noticing, Tammy, is less, where my head goes is less the depression and more the whole situation. So I'm just wondering, I have a feeling you were thinking that too. So what are your thoughts about this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like you guys are kind of trapped in the in between, and and he's depressed. So I don't know what with our treatment program, we have a great consulting physician who really gets addiction, but also gets depression, and can help, moderate if there's medications that need to be done. But people in active recovery, or in active addiction, are depressed, especially if they're trying to stay sober and they're failing. That's depressing in and of itself. So like figuring out if he's clinically depressed is different. But for you, what I really hear is 2 years of separation. What's the plan? What is the plan? Is it, or is it going to be 3 years or 4 years? Living in that in between of like, is there there's no final disclosure, failed his polygraph. If there's no disclosure that is complete enough, he's probably going to fail the next polygraph. And he's only been sober for 3 months at a time over all of these years. Yeah, over 2 years. So to me, this is like, he needs way more help than he's getting. That is what
if he
the
wants
highlight
it.
is for me.
If he wants it.
Exactly. And if he doesn't,
I mean, if I wanted to stay married, and if you were deeply important to me, and I was going to do anything I could to make sure that our 40-year relationship turned to 50 or whatever I needed it to be. I mean, I'm assuming you're married for 40 years. He's not 40 himself. And, I don't know whether this man wants to be alone as he becomes an older man, but I want you to hear that he's setting up the circumstances by which he is going to be alone. Your focus on him and his depression and that is not really where my focus would be. My focus is, why are you worried about his depression, as opposed to, when are you going to go see a divorce lawyer? Like, who cares about his depression? That's not your problem. He's slipping. He's not disclosing. He's lying. Look, I've worked with a lot of couples who've been together 40 years. And at that point, it's almost impossible to think about, what would it be like to not be together, and we're older now and we plan for this time, whatever it is. But I want to give you props. You had the guts to kick him out, or he left. Good for you. Why would you want someone to be back or work out? Why would you want to work out his problems? And the only answer can be, by the way, that you still love him and you care about him and you want him to be better. And I get that. But how is that serving you to take care of his problem? Look, when I do nice things for people, I think that they need to be nice to me. They don't have to do something for me in return, but they need to be nice to me. And what your husband is doing is not nice. He is hurting you actively, doesn't seem that motivated to get better. And as Tammy said, if he really is motivated, there are lots of places to get help. But if he's not motivated, there are a lot of ways to put you off. And one of the ways I could put you off is say, I'm just so depressed, not feeling good. What a great way to make you feel sorry for me instead of feeling, angry at me. So if I were you, and by the way, 40 years, I know how to manipulate my spouse. Trust me, I've spent enough years to know what pushes your buttons. And if I say I'm struggling with this or that, maybe I'm going to get your heartfelt response, even though what I'm actually doing is slipping and lying. And, so pay attention to the behavior and less what he says and more what he's doing. And I got to tell you, after 40 years and 2 years separate, I don't know if you're going to get back together. I think if you had the guts and the objectivity and the strength to say no more after 40 years, someone better be showing you the kind of thing that you want to be seeing to finish out your time in this life with this person. And what I'm hearing from you, I wouldn't want to waste another moment on this relationship as it is now. And it's not my job to say you shouldn't be together, but I would not want to be in a circumstance where I'd hung out for 2 years hoping this person would get better, and I see that they are still stringing me along.
Well put, stringing along. Okay, next question. I'm a betrayed partner 2 years out from D-Day, and my husband and I are currently separated. He has been to treatment and has been in and out of counseling for the last year. He is in a very dark place and has suicidal thoughts every day. He is currently refusing any sort of help. He's in the military, so it is a tricky situation because if mental health issues are found out, it could have career-ending consequences. Mm-hmm. Is there such a thing as an intervention for sex addicts?
Okay, those seem like separate things. So yes. Do you mind breaking that down some, Tammy, to help answer it?
Yes, there are a handful of people that do interventions for sex addicts. So if you're looking for those kind of resources, email me, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com, including where you are, although most of them will work in, will fly around and go to places too. But the bigger thing to me is it's tricky because of the military. So can you weigh in on that, please?
Well, the only thing I can say is, she's absolutely right. And for those of you who are not familiar, I've done some trainings in the military, and the challenge is, we ask people to share their feelings, to come. That's what healing is. You come forward, you talk about your issues, you share about them. But in the military, if it gets back to your CO, it's going to go in your record. You're never going to get anywhere in the military. You're never going to move forward. So I think it is tricky. There are two things I would say about this. Number one, and Tammy can give you this sort of recommendation. We know a treatment center that takes TRICARE, which is the vets and the military's insurance. And so I know that there's a place, if he wanted to, that he could probably go for at least 2 or 3, well, probably 3 weeks, and TRICARE would probably pay for most of it. I think that's correct, Tammy. So we can give you, we don't just
We aren't great with
refer,
insurance, but I do know where they have TRICARE. So yes.
we don't refer everyone to us, and not everyone belongs with us, and everyone has different situations. Many of you write us and say, I need a therapist, I need a treatment center, here are my circumstances. If one of us, or especially Tammy, writes back, she's going to give you a few options. She's never going to say just us. So, you know, just to say it, that's a perfect example where I might want to refer someone to a place that you wouldn't have to spend a lot of money. The other issue is trickier. I believe, and I'm almost certain, that the military has, and I don't know what branch he's in. I know them. I'm pretty sure the Marines, the Navy, and maybe the Air Force have developed. They understand this problem in mental health, and they understand that the people within their system, look, actually the people in their system are trained that they have to release the notes to the CEO. That's what they have to do. But there are professionals that are being hired by the military who don't work for the military. They're consulting as therapists, and they're all over the world. I know this because I have friends who are like, I'm going to go to Japan for 3 years and be a consulting therapist. And what that means is they don't work for the military, so they don't have that responsibility of writing it up to the CO, the commanding officer, but they can listen and hear, and the military will pay for that. And again, this treatment center, I'm thinking, they may have a referral to therapists who do this, or who are on TRICARE, or so. Military issues, I would defer to places that deal with a lot of military issues, and we can probably mention a couple. We also know, by the way, I think therapists who are vets, have been vet, you know, or know that system, have written about these issues. Tammy's nodding her head, so I know she does. And we can send you referrals for some of those people who might be helpful in your circumstances.
But the suicidal thoughts, that really is bothersome to me.
Thank you. So, I mean, so there are a lot of ways to look at that. Look, if someone I love is suicidal, I'm going to do everything I can to encourage them to get help. If he's not willing to get that help, you know, as Tammy said, there are interventions and ways, but I wouldn't call it an intervention on sex addiction. I would say my husband is deeply depressed and he's really struggling, and how can I get him into some kind of care so that they can, because we, at Seeking Integrity, nobody comes in just as a sex addict. I mean, that may be, or porn, that's the presenting issue in our world. We call them presenting issues. That was the issue you came in for. But I know that that's the tip of the iceberg, and there's all kinds of things underneath that. Inevitably, when we have 6 or 8 people in treatment, someone has depression and never recognized it. Someone is not on the medication they need to be on. Someone needs to deal with trauma in a different way. So there's all kinds of things that people have underneath, but the sexual behavior is the presenting problem. So there are places that can be addressed. And by the way, you can go to an outside therapist and pay for it, you know, if he's willing to go. The problem is, if he's not willing to go, it's really unfair on you. Like, here's someone who's saying to you, I'm obsessing about and musing about not being here, but I don't want you to do anything about it. That's very cruel in a sense. I know he's only thinking of himself. If I was depressed, I would be too. But what an incredible burden on you to say to you, I might off myself tomorrow, and you're the only one who knew about it, but I tied your hands, and you'll forever say to yourself, well, I don't care what he said, I should have done something about this. So why don't you think about where you would be if he already did it? And in your current living circumstance, in your current life, what are you going to say to yourself later that you wish you had done so that this wasn't the outcome? Because he could hurt himself tomorrow or the next day. We don't, hopefully never, God forbid, you know, but if he does, you will wish that you'd taken certain actions that you haven't taken yet. Why don't you consider it that may happen? And what am I going to really want to have focused on before to make it not happen? And you know, there are people in the military who they need to leave the military because the issues they have are so profoundly troubling that they're either going to get thrown out, you know, dishonorable discharge, which, by the way, sexual issues can often, and I'm just talking about cheating, can get you thrown out for. So maybe, or someone's going to realize his depression. So maybe you guys should deal with this before the problem comes to you, is what I'm saying. Anything else, Tammy?
No, that was really helpful. Thank you. So,
and let somebody else, please, let someone else know. Don't be alone with this. Tell your parents, tell his parents, tell your pastor, but don't be alone with these things that are going on with him. And if you can't get through to him, maybe his brother can, maybe his sister. And by the way, with suicidality, all bets are off on confidentiality. I will tell whoever it takes in my family, my spouse's family, my friends, whoever will get through to them is who I will call. I don't want to be alone with this. So please don't be alone with this. He has shared it with you. He's looking for some kind of help. Help him get it.
Thank you. So the next question, I know this is a very sensitive topic and I do not take this lightly, but I have done a lot of research and seriously wondering if my SA spouse has a personality disorder such as psychopathy or borderline personality disorder. He has a long history since teenage years that fit these descriptions. I thought this had to do with his addiction, but he and his own CSAT say he is making good progress, but I see no empathy and our relationship is getting worse. I honestly don't know how to approach this and how touchy it is, but I don't want to be focused on him getting better from his addiction and there be a deeper problem with a disorder that may never get better. That's complicated.
Well, let me just say something about personality disorders in general. I've been doing treatment for 25 years. I've been licensed. I've probably seen 1,000 clients or so. In terms of full-on personality disorders, I've seen maybe 6. I see a lot of people with traits, people who are narcissistic, people who are dependent, people who have, but it isn't just a personality disorder is not necessarily fixed. I mean, a full-on disorder might be, but what we struggle with is more about trauma, about abuse, about what we've done to ourselves and what we've done to other people. And I don't think it's a good idea to diagnose your husband. If you have a license and you are a professional, preferably PhD or above, then I might take my husband's symptoms to my therapist and say, you know, I know a lot about these things and I'm concerned. What do you think? But what you're describing is something I would call graduate school disease, which is what all the grad students have in therapy school, which is every time they say, now here's this disorder and here are all the symptoms, everyone in class goes, oh my God, what if I'm that? And then they tell you another one, oh, because when you're hearing these things roll out, you will identify with different pieces. And with your husband, you're going to identify strongly with certain pieces because every addict in active addiction and probably for the first year after looks very narcissistic, like the full-on personality disorder. If you come regularly, you will hear that all of the spouses say, for the most part, you know, he or she treated me like crap and we finally got the problem solved and now they're still treating me like crap. Well, if they knew how to treat you better, they would, but maybe just stopping the behavior is their first step. And actually getting to how to be a decent, loving human being, that could be a while down the road. I did write a book about this called Out of the Doghouse, A Cheating Man's Guide to Relationship Healing. Long subtitle, Out of the Doghouse, A Cheating Man's Guide to Relationship Healing. And I wrote it for men because men who cheat on a woman, that's how I wrote it for, because men who cheat on a woman always, near always, minimize the amount of pain that they have caused. They always think it should be over sooner. And they are not necessarily treating you. In fact, they're most often not treating your spouses the way you want to be treated. And I don't think that's because necessarily they have a disorder. I think they don't know how. They don't know how to be the kind of spouse that they should be when they've hurt you. Or listen, if your spouse knew how to deal with conflict, disappointments in them, disagreements, they wouldn't be an addict. You know, one of the reasons we struggle with addiction is because we don't know how to handle some very basic issues with human beings and we run from them. So just because your spouse, to all of you guys, has learned to not run from his or her challenges, their behavior, learn to stand up and be in it rather than running from it, that doesn't mean they know how to be a better person. Being a better person can take a while. Really appreciating and understanding the depth of pain they caused you can take a while. Empathy is a later stage development in this process. The first is wake up, look at what you've been doing, look at how it's affected your life, look at what you want and how you're destroying it. And then it's, I wonder where this came from. Wow, you were really screwed up as a kid. No wonder why you ended up here. And then we start to move on to fixing the problem and changing the problem. But it takes a long time. And just dealing with the addiction can be all somebody can do for a while. So if he's not nice, if he's not kind, whatever these symptoms are, you can set, Tammy will say it, boundaries. If I find that you're acting this way around me, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to play with a dog. I don't want to be around you when you act this way. And when you're acting differently, in an hour, I'll come back and see if it's better, if it's different. Give them a chance to see if they can adjust their attitude, if you will, but rather than judging it or looking for it in a book. So I understand, and Tammy will say this, every partner wants to read every single book, and most of you are more educated in sex addiction than I am, and I have a PhD. Because you are worried about your marriages, you're worried about your lives, and you read every single thing that could possibly be there. But stop with the sex addiction books. Just stop there. Because when you get into psychopathology, you really need a licensed professional who's done this work for years and years and really knows all the changing diagnoses. And I don't think your spouse has a full-blown personality disorder. However, addicts are they have very distorted thinking. They're only thinking about themselves. They have no idea how to deal with the damage they've caused on their own, and we're pretty crazy to begin with. So I don't think it's your responsibility to diagnose him or to tell him what he needs to do to get better. Your job is to tell him how you feel around him and how he's acting makes you feel. But his diagnosis, leave that to people who are paid to do that. It'll only make you feel worse. Then you'll find the next one, you're like, oh, I was wrong. He's really this. Leave that part to us. And we'll tell you. If I think your husband borderline, I'll tell you. But I don't think you should necessarily figure that one out.
Next question. Married couple, second time. My husband is seeking SA treatment and has recently relapsed with extramarital affairs. We are hoping to approach recovery with the goal of healing and preserving the marriage. I, the partner, am struggling with whether or not to stay in the home or separate while he is going through treatment. Is it beneficial or detrimental to continue the act as a married couple, including sex, in the early days of recovery?
Well, let me say something about the sex first. And Tammy, I think you might have some thoughts about this, not the sex, but other parts of this question. Partners have been violated by betrayal. It's not unusual at the beginning for you to want to have more control over us in some way, because what you realize is we've been out of control. You never even knew about it. And one of the ways that some partners will want to control us is through sex. You guys sometimes think, well, if I have a lot of sex with him or her, they are less likely to go do this because now they're sexually satisfied. Or I want to comfort myself that he or she's not going to really get involved with someone else because we're having sex and that feels like we're more connected and that's exciting. Maybe we will stay, we'll focus more on each other. Or I'm afraid they're going to leave me. And if I have a lot of sex, maybe, we have spouses have many reasons why they choose to engage in sex with us in the beginning. But I would suggest to you there's one reason and one reason only why someone in a married relationship who's been through this would want to have sex with your partner. And the question is, do you trust us? Because if you were a single woman and I said to you, is it okay to have sex with people you don't feel safe and trust? You'd probably say, no, I don't think that's a good idea, except maybe when I was 19. And so why would you have sex with someone that you don't trust, even if you're married to them? So to answer your first question, until trust is restored, and that can take a year or more, and that's provided all the stars are aligned, you may not have sex with him for a while. Can you satisfy yourself? Sure. Can you satisfy yourself with him present? Sure. Do you feel comfortable with him being inside your body or being physically intimate to that level? If I don't trust that somebody's not being with someone else, I don't think I'd want them that close to me. So that's one part of the question. And Tammy, I want to hear the other. I don't remember. Or maybe you want to answer.
Is it beneficial or detrimental to continue to act as a married couple?
Well, you are a married couple, and if you're married, I think you should act married. And I don't say that sarcastically. So I did a wonderful podcast with a man named Dr. Stan Tatkin, Tatkin. And the podcast is called We Do. That's what that actual podcast is called. We've done like 85 of them, so I don't remember all of them, but that one I remember. And one of the things that Dr. Tatkin talks about is, what it takes to have a relationship, what it takes to maintain a relationship, what is the purpose of a relationship. And in great part, this is really about your coming first, his coming first, both of you really focusing on each other's needs, each other's wants, and really being open to making that happen. I'm desperately looking for the rest of this. Oh, I wanted to say something else about that. Oh, right. So one of the things that Dr. Tatkin said, which I really love, is he says to couples, when they're happy, when they're having fun, of course, they're never seeing a therapist then, but nonetheless, he'll say to them, when you were happy, when you were having fun, when everything was great, were you in your marriage? And, oh yes, we were in our marriage. We were in love and we were having fun and we were into being married. So my question is, based on what he has to say, and he says the same thing too, aren't you in your marriage now? You're hurting, you're angry, you're confused, you're both a mess. That's still your marriage. So as long as you are married, I don't think you get to say, take marriage off the table. Now, you can say, do you think it's best for us to separate? I think that's up to you. I wouldn't, if you're going to separate and you really mean it, you might talk about that now while your spouse is in treatment, because while they're there, they are going to have lots of feelings, as anyone would, about you saying, I don't want to be living with you. And what better place for this person to hear that when they're surrounded with a lot of support and therapists. I've had spouses have divorce papers sent to treatment so that that person could deal with what was about to happen with them while they were with us. So Tammy, can you add to that? I think I'm talked out, but
Well,
there's a little bit
the
more
only
to
thing,
say.
some people put their relationship in safe harbor, like, which is just a safe space, and go, okay, we're going to just see, because he is going to treatment. He is working on these things. So is it worth taking a little pause and just go, we're going to not make any quick decisions or reactionary measures. We're going to see. And it doesn't mean you're committed to staying in the relationship forever. And like his behavior may be so egregious that, like Dr. Rob said, you file for divorce while he's in there. But I also hear you considering having sex with him. So it feels like more like I would encourage you to get support for
Ambivalence.
you. Yes. There's a betrayed partner group Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific time. I'm subbing in this week. I would invite you to join us, but those are the kind of topics that come up. But hopefully you've got pro-dependent aligned support therapy for you to support you in this traumatic time. So
And by
next
the way,
question. Oh, go ahead.
one more thing about that, this person does sound like, and I'm glad you caught it, Tammy, someone who really needs to be around other people who are dealing with this, because these are very basic questions. I don't mean to be insulting, but should we have sex? Should we stay together? And under what circumstances? These are the questions that every spouse who does this regularly, comes to these kind of groups or more interactive groups, they're asking all the same questions. And I think for you to hear another woman who's in your circumstances struggling with the same thing will not only help you feel better about yourself and your situation, but you're also going to get some answers. Thanks, Tammy.
Next question. My girlfriend finally left about a month ago after I didn't get help for my sex addiction and intimacy anorexia. I never physically cheated, just watched porn and would look at pics on social media. She says this is still cheating. Is this cheating? I remember you answering the micro cheating question a long time ago. Do you remember that?
To me,
you don't remember it.
I don't remember micro cheating. I remember my definition for cheating, but that's all. But what's micro cheating?
Well, because it was a topic that was, it's just micro cheating. And you were like, it's cheating. It's got cheating in the name. It's still cheating.
So we've done some research. A friend of mine and a colleague of mine did some research because we wrote a book about this a while ago. And what we were curious about was I think we talked to about 60 women. And we were curious about what percentage of them felt they were cheated on or felt that it was cheating if their spouse was looking at a lot of porn or those kinds of images. And I think it was something like 92% of the women said that they felt they were being cheated on, even though it was just porn or it was just whatever. And, I've defined cheating really by the keeping of meaningful secrets from someone who's deeply important to me. So it isn't cheating. By the way, it isn't cheating if you've started a relationship and you're starting to live together or get married, and before you've gotten there, I say to you, listen, I like to look at porn, I look occasionally, is that going to bother you? You negotiate before you get in a relationship. But if it's 10 years later and you just found out that this is all going on, then it's absolutely cheating because it's been hidden from you and it's been kept a secret. And now all of a sudden you're finding out. It doesn't matter whether you were cheated on with the porn. You were cheated on by this person taking their emotional, spiritual, and physical life away from the relationship and not really telling you about it or giving you a clue. It's not unusual for people who are engaged with someone who looks a lot of porn to say, you seem really distant, you seem really unavailable, you seem really down, I don't know why you're locking yourself in your office for so many hours. They have so many questions about what's really going on. And I think they deserve answers. So more, Tammy, more questions.
Nope, we're out of time. So,
yeah.
all right, well,
I know. Let me tell you,
but
go ahead, Tammy, you
go ahead.
close this out.
Well, no, so there's so many good questions in there, and I wish, but you know what? We'll be back next week to do the same thing. And Dr. Rob is also on intherooms.com on Friday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So, and then there are more drop-in groups and, for both men and women, female addicts, male partners, everything on sexandrelationshiphealing.com.
And it's
I
free.
invite you to do
That's
that.
the
Yeah,
it's
those are all
free.
free. So yeah.
And podcasts are free and all of that stuff. So, and this is all free. Get as much as you can from us. There are 14 groups a week. There are 84 podcasts. I have probably 500 Psychology Today blogs that I've written. So, if you think the work that we're doing is useful, take advantage of us. We're all over it. And just to say it, if 5 out of 100 of you go to treatment, we get paid, and that pays for all the free work we do. So if you ever hear us mention our program, we are absolutely mentioning it. We absolutely do want people to come. I think we do amazing work.
I do
But
too.
the reason we do it is the ability through that to be able to give all this away. And that, works for us. Thank you, Tammy, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
See you later.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.